Namaskar, very good evening to all. People say the law is what holds the society together. Today, in the series of Education for Life, we'll have an engaging conversation on law for today and tomorrow. The eminent panelist for the subject today's subject is Professor Ved Kumari, Vice Chancellor of National Law University, Odisha. Professor Ved Kumari is former Dean and Head Faculty of Law, University of Delhi. Professor Ved Kumari's areas are primarily juvenile justice, criminal law, gender discrimination, clinical education, and judicial training. There is a long list of credentials, so that experience will speak itself. She has been a fellow of Commonwealth Judicial Education Institute, Canada, Commonwealth Fellow at Warwick University, UK, and Fulbright Fellow at Vanderbilt University, USA. We welcome Professor Ved Kumari. Namaskar. The another eminent panelist is Dr. T.S. Somashekar. He's a professor of economics, chairperson, postgraduate, and doctoral council, National Law School of India University, that is NLSIU, Bengaluru. He is director of Center for Competition and Regulation. He is an empaneled advisor to the Competition Commission of India and a member to the advisory body of European Doctorate in Law and Economics. He was fellow in the Institute of Law and Economics at the University of Hamburg, Germany. He served as an advisor to the Ministry of Commerce and Industries, Government of Karnataka, to help to formulate the industrial policy. Professor Somashekar is member of advisory board for European Doctorate in Law and Economics, EDLE. Welcome, Professor Somashekar. To lay the foundation of today's subject, to begin with Professor Ved Kumari ji, law is landmine of science. And if we go back,
landmine of
science.
Okay.
So to begin with, we'll go to the methodological part subsequently. Your take on that law is landmine of science.
You know, for me, landmine is never a positive word. And law for me is a positive word. So I do not think it is the landmine. I think it is this system to make the landmines ineffective. You have to bring peace, you have to bring law and order, you have to ensure justice to people who are not able to access it themselves. So for me, to start to say this is landmine of anything, it's explosive. For me, law is not explosive. It may become explosive only when it is used negatively and it is misuse of power under law when that happens. But I don't think I will characterize it as landmine for anything.
So law is art or science? Let us reframe the question. Or it's
What
blending of
different does it, no, for me, what difference does it make whether it's an art or a science? Because this is something, these are the discussions we had about 40 years ago. I am not getting into this division. What difference does it make whether art or a science? Whether are we saying that if it is art, it is more important, if it is science, then it is more important. Whether it's art or science, it is
not about the importance. It is about the categorization of the subject.
But why do we need to categorize? What is the rationale for asking this question?
Okay, I'll come back to the point. Coming to Dr. Somashekar, your take on, in your opinion, it is a blending of art and science or something else? So you are on mute.
You need to unmute. Somashekar need to
Okay, thank you. I like the word blend better than landmine because, as you say, if you need to study law, if you need to practice law, if you need to be a policymaker, it's very important that you do understand the other broader, disciplines that lead to the formulation of laws. So that's very important. Whether you call it pure social sciences or whether you call it physical sciences, if you're in IPR, you better know some physical science. If you're in some other discipline, even if you're in the area of criminology or forensics and so on, there are some pure sciences that are involved over there. So there is always a mix of different types of social or physical sciences that is essential for one to get a good grasp of the law.
Yeah,
But I don't think, Professor Somashekar, that it's only a blend. It has to have access to all kinds of arts and sciences, because cases come from pure science, from social science, from art, and therefore a lawyer or a judge will have to have knowledge of all these fields.
Yes.
And when if you're looking at science as and for me, although the question is actually what do you classify as a science? So whether we are talking about science only in terms of natural science, then this question is relevant that it is a science or an art. But if social science is also science and it has a different principles to be called as a science, then I think the same thing goes for law as well.
Yeah. I mean, the way in which we look at
some logic is there.
Yeah, I think when we say science, it is always an approach towards a study rather than say that only biology or physics is a science. That's the reason why we say social science or physical sciences is the approach that we have, a rigorous theoretical as well as empirical validation of the theories. That is the approach that we have in sciences. So to that extent, we also say legal sciences. I mean, there's nothing wrong in that, because that's the way in which we should approach any discipline.
Thank you. I think now the subject is well explained. Now moving to the ancient time, the mythology are replete with the stories of supremacy of law. Even at the time of Mahabharata, we see, though there was a fight between the brothers, but logic, the principles were supreme. The same principle applies anywhere and everywhere. So out of your own experiences, if you can correlate mythology with today's time, for the purpose of better understanding, Professor Ved Kumari.
When you take Mahabharata as an example, as one big story, epic from our mythology, some people say it's not mythology, it actually happened. I'm not going there, whether it happened or not. For me, the story of the Mahabharata is a very contemporary story. What we see today, you can see it in Mahabharata. So that way, it's very impressive for me that the social questions, the social systems haven't changed. But when it comes to the question of looking at the claim of one side being on the right and the other side being on the wrong, I think there are a lot of sub-stories which can be looked at to understand the range of issues which can be raised. We have been told from our childhood that Pandavas were in the right, they were the Dharma group, and the other one was the opposite of that. But if you look at their genealogy, Dhritarashtra was blind, and Pandu never had any children of his own. None of his children were his own children. So these were all children of some other gods. So Dhritarashtra wasn't given the kingship because he was blind. So the other person who never had any sons, how did that line got the kingdom in any case to start with? And if you look at from that perspective, then your disability, that whether the disability of being blind should stop you from being a king. We have this contemporary question today that whether a blind person can become a judge. So what is the qualities required, whether not being able to see? And if you look at the Western image of this goddess of justice, she puts the blindfold. So you don't need eyes actually to do justice. No, that's the symbolic presentation of law and its thing from the West. So from that perspective, I do not see that the story is a black and white story that one side was on the right and the other side was on the wrong. It's a question of from whose perspective are you looking at it? If you look at from the disability perspective, certainly Dhritarashtra, and also Duryodhan was the elder of the five. He was born before the five were born. So if you were to look at that, his father, and if it's a disability, because of disability, he was not given this. So then it was the Pandu's kingship was more in trust till the children of Dhritarashtra become adults. So if you look at from that perspective, then it's not a very clear black and white story between the right and the wrong. And I think as a law person, we need to open our minds to see that when two people are fighting in the court, there is always another story. It's a different thing that in whose favor the court gives the story, gives the judgment. But both the sides, from their perspective, has a rightful claim to what they're claiming. Very few people go to the court just to harass the other. Majority of them believe that what I'm saying is the right thing. And I think that's very important to understand. That's the only way you can actually fight for either of the two parties. If you believe that no, one party is completely frivolous, then there's no reason for a lawyer to take up the case.
Thank you, Professor Ved Kumari ji, for making the subject so simple. Dr. Somashekar, from your own experiences, if you have any analogy to throw some more.
Well, I had a question for a colleague of mine recently saying that there's a lot of doubt as to whether these things really happened. Did the Mahabharata happen, or did the Ramayana really happen? Right? But the answer was, and it was so nicely said, the answer is, it doesn't matter. There are many questions which we really don't have answers to. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So there are many questions for which we have no definite answers. There's no empirical proof, right? But then the point of faith is that you don't rely on empirical, proof. There's a different manner in which you get into the area of faith. So let's leave that alone. But I'm going to approach the Mahabharata and the Ramayana from the important lessons that they give. That is what is important, rather than trying to prove whether they were real or not. And there are such significant lessons that they have for us. And I'm going to pull out something from an economics perspective over there. I find the lessons from Mahabharata not entirely only in this manner, but there is a principle of economic efficiency that is involved there. So, and what is that principle of efficiency, which later got distorted in a different manner, right? So in the Bhagavad Gita, Lord Krishna says, I am the one who created the 4 Varna systems, Chaturvarna Maya Shrishtam, right? Now, and then there is also the concept of Dharma, and then there's the Swadharma, the more eternal concept of Dharma. Now, Dharma is to perform one's duty. And it says you perform your duty, your own duty, and don't try to do someone else's duty. It says it is better to do your own duty rather than do someone else's duty, because you may actually land up doing a subservient job of that. You'll end up doing, making a mess out of, some other function which you're not really suited to. And the way in which the Varna system was actually, divided as well was essentially on the basis of person's capabilities. That's the original intention of that, which means you have a functional division of areas in which people work, which is not decided by birth, or which is not decided by, essentially it's not decided by birth, but rather it is decided by a person's mental capacity, a person's ability to do a certain task, all of which points to a system which was based on efficiency. So that's what I read in what existed then. Now, laws oriented towards efficiency have to, undoubtedly change as societies, cultures, norms, etc. evolve over a period of time. It cannot be static, but the underlying principle can still be the same.
Somashekar, when we look at this story from Mahabharata, the Varna system as it operated did not operate on capacity or the ability in all these stories. I forget the name of the Dasiputra, the third child. He was always referred to as Dasiputra. He never became the son of the king. He always remained the Putra of the Dasi only. Everybody else is the father. No, they're taking the genealogy from the father, but this man is not. So it was not by birth. It was not that it was by their ability, but by their status of being born to whom? What was this person's Karna's story?
Karna, yeah.
Karna is the same thing, that even though he's been brought up by somebody else, but it is said that no, and So why could he not become the king, etc.? And that's where Karna goes to the other side, because he's not given respect, because he's the, I forget now, Sarathi. No, he was brought up by whom? So it is not the king's family. So he cannot be brought into the kingdom. He cannot be given, and that's where Duryodhana said, I'll make you the minister. So therefore, this whole thing, this whole assumption that I don't know at which age the status was determined by the action you did. Your entry to the Gurukul will be dependent on whether Dronacharya will not give education to children who are not born to the king. I mean, they may be capable, and that's where you lost your thumb.
Eklavya.
Eklavya loses his thumb because he is taking education, and he's not even taking education from him. Even then, he loses his thumb. Because this fellow who is uphill, he cannot compete with Arjuna. So for me, this is very, very caste-ridden. This is very much static by birth only. So in the story is couched into that language. It's not couched in a by birth ability syndrome.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Although the legal theory was right, there were definitely violations of the legal theory.
Yeah, true.
So moving further, so can we say law is a live impersonal science, constantly in need of change in ever-changing environment? I hope I'm audible.
Say that again, please. You're not very clear.
Okay. Law is a live impersonal science, constantly in need of change in ever-changing environment.
I mean, the only thing which is constant is change. So the law also has to change. But whether it will change for good or bad, that's where the controversy, where should the focus has to be. We are proposing these changes now in the IPC.
Yes, I was coming to that question.
No, so certainly, I mean, I don't think there can be any two views about it, that law has to change. And who will support what change will be determined by what ideology they come from. And in lawmaking, we say that there are always three pressure groups which determine what the shape of the law will be. It will change. It will keep changing also. But dependent on who are the target of change, who will have to change their behavior, who are asking for change, and who will benefit. Whoever is the strongest in the three, the law's shape and substance of the law will be determined by that factor. So if you're making law for women, you might make ornamental laws and people will think, a lot of things have happened. But substantively, it will not change the status of women. The same can go for scheduled caste, scheduled tribe, and go for transgender. We got this Transgender Persons Act. And in that legislation, if there's a sexual abuse of a transgender person, maximum punishment is 3 years, maximum. If you commit rape, similar kind of a scenario on a woman, minimum is 7 years. So maximum 3 years. Transgender person is not a human being. They don't feel harassed. They're not abused.
Yes.
So you made the law, but what did you do in that law? So I think it's kind of something we need to kind of ask the second question, that what kind of changes are introduced? How are they introduced? What are the forces which bring about the change? Change is absolutely essential. It will keep happening, either for the good or the better. But to which direction the change will go? That is determined by factors other than our some abstract sense of justice. So we always believe that sometimes we kind of we collapse the two terms, justice and law. But law is not necessarily justice, because law is a political exercise, and it is in our system. It is brought by the elected members who have to come back on the election again after 5 years. So a lot of those factors also play a part into what kind of laws are brought and what kind of laws are not brought.
So, Dr. Somashekar, from your point of view, in what way the current changes which have been made in IPC, CRPC, and in Evidence Act, they will reshape the whole judicial system?
No, see,
or it is just a old, just renaming the old law?
No, see, we have to be clear. One is that change has to take place. any legal system that does not change in accordance with social changes is only going to lead to a breakdown of the system. Let's be clear about that. But when we speak of change, I mean, of course, Professor Ved Kumari is an expert in the area of criminal law and so on. But then there are other areas as well, which inevitably we can say, well, law will have to change either because there's a demand pull or because there is a supply shortage. All right. Now, in one case, let's see what's happening over here. We have the digital personal data protection, law that has come about. Now, why has that come about? Essentially because you have a huge change in the manner in which, in the adoption of technology and the way in which it is affecting our lives, and the kind of compromises that we are, creating for ourselves. And that process, we need a law. So it is a demand creating, causing a necessity for a change in law. If you don't do that in an appropriate manner, then you're going to lead to chaos in the society, right? So it necessitates a change. In certain cases, changes in law are brought about not because the society wants it, but maybe because there is some other necessity from the greater interest of the society, although the society doesn't desire it. The political representatives of us decide that we need to change it. But then we have to understand one thing. There's the arrows paradigm that we speak about, the impossibility theorem that we are talking about, where essentially no government is ever able to get one thing right. That is to formulate laws which best represent the interest of the society. Some kind of a social welfare function which is constructed, and you try to achieve it, you're never really going to be able to do it. Neither will you construct a social welfare function which best represents the interests of all people, nor will you be able to implement a policy of any reasonable representation of a social welfare function. That is a difficulty involved in law. So we have to accept that any laws that are created will have costs to some and will have pluses to others, and it's never going to be perfect. And that's precisely the reason why you'll have a lot of demand on courts to keep refining the law that keeps emerging.
Coming to criminal law, the criminal law amendments. Professor Puneet, I thought you raised the question on the proposed criminal law changes. I have yet to do the full analysis, but yesterday only we had a presentation. And some of the startling things, abolished 377. Now, what is the consequence of 377 abolition? That forced sexual incarnal sex with a man is no more punishable. What the people have been asking was decriminalization of consensual sex among human beings. But now what we have said is even non-consensual sex among two men is out of the purview of the section. What are we thinking about? We have introduced a definition of gender, that wherever there is reference to, gender would mean person of any sex. But there is no section which uses the word gender. What is the importance of the definition? So such fiascos are introduced in that legislation. Sedition law abolished, but opposite. We abolished TADA, then we abolished POTA, then we brought in UAPA. So you abolish sedition and put it even much wider in a new legislation. So therefore, there's always this whole tension about change being for what purpose, whether it is for purpose of saying we're doing something and actually destroy something, kind of give more power to people who has already been abusing power, or to actually give, when you say law has this dual function of empowering as well as disempowering. And it can happen for the government, it can happen for the people. People are also empowered when we say Article 32 is your fundamental right to approach the court for success. So it's empowering the people there. But when it says police can arrest you for these offenses, and the offenses are couched in a language which is very, very generic, it empowers, or it gives an opportunity to the enforcement agencies to abuse that also. So criminal law is certainly an area which requires very, very precise definitions, very limited in their scope, so that people are not able to bring in others who are not actually part of that situation. So even if we were to suppose abolish 377, we could have at least made the offense of rape as gender neutral. That has not been changed. So ultimately, who is going to suffer? All the people who have homosexuality as their preferred, the same MSM is their preferred mode of sexual satisfaction. They can now force themselves on others. So children will be still protected in a POCSO because that's gender neutral. But what about adults? So earlier we had not protected the married woman against sexual aggression. Now we have taken out men also from sexual aggression from the same sex. So not easier.
Yeah, a way to go. So in criminal offenses systems, right from offense to trial and conviction, investigation and trial, these are two pivotal points. So in what way technology can be a great enabler to curb, rather first of all to for the purpose of effective investigation and then subsequently effective trial? Dr. Somashekar, if you can.
It's not a question of what aspect are we talking about. If we are talking about, for example, use of technology for determination of age, the science is not there. Till date, we cannot determine, and that's a major issue in juvenile justice, that 90% of the children who are in the system do not have a birth certificate. So for them, medical certificate ultimately becomes an option, becomes the choice. And medical science is not yet developed enough to say that this is the date on which this child was born. It's a plus minus 2 years. I think Professor Sharma, sorry? Professor Sharma is frozen on my side, and I do not know whether I'm audible. Am I audible?
You're audible. You're audible. He's frozen on my screen too.
Yeah. So, so for me, this whole question of technology in what fields it's important. So certainly, the technology when it comes to the handwriting experts, blood tests, there is a use of. And the latest technology about the brain, what is called that? Brain sign, the adolescents' brain scans, etc., have brought in a new knowledge to say that why children of the 16 to 18 years should not be punished. But when it comes to the serum being injected and then you are supposed to tell the truth, all these are very questionable categories. So yes, when you do X-rays, when you do forensic science, it's a question of what you call as technology. Certainly, technology is very helpful to trace where is your mobile phone or where you were with your mobile phone when this offense is alleged. So there are pluses and minuses in technology, but I don't think. And recently, some news was there that I forget now which country it was from, but they're using the face tracking technology to identify offenders. And an innocent person was, the IA did not act properly, and it created a face which belonged to somebody which was not the offender, but he was put into the system, etc. So the faults of technology we have to be very aware of the misuse and the limitations of technology. And in the Indian system, technology, the technologically produced evidence is seen as supporting, not conclusive evidence.
Dr. Somashekar, coming to you.
Yeah, I mean, one sentence there which was very clear, that technology has both pluses and minuses. But at the same time, let's look at where we are currently. I mean, most people are fond of saying this. We have plenty of laws, but it's in the enforcement that we lack. And that's an area where technology can really help. I mean, from simple things to traffic signal violations, to insider trade, to more complex things like insider trading in the stock exchange, right? So technology does help. How does it help? It does help in detection, and it also does help in proving infringements, and therefore improve the chances of people who commit offenses being convicted, right? So yes, it does aid. So technology can improve the number of people, can improve the chances of solving a greater and greater number of cases. But while we stress on technology, we've got to be aware that in a country like ours, trying to go whole hog in terms of incorporating technology in every possible sphere involves a cost. All right. And the question is how much of that cost that we can bear. And that in itself involves a trade-off, right? So we should be aware of the trade-offs. When I say trade-offs, I mean the more and more the government spends on enforcement in terms of incorporating technology, well, there's an opportunity cost to that in the sense that it's got to minimize its expenditure in certain other categories. So being conscious of those trade-offs, yes, technology can improve in the detection and in the proving of guilt in many, many cases. There are other areas in which technology can help. Technology, I mean, if you use blockchain technology in the case in which, particularly in government procurement, let's say, it can go a long way towards, reducing corruption and improving the contribution of taxpayers' money. So there are many ways in which it can be used in a cost-effective manner as well. But as pointed out, there are dangers, right? So you can't use data collection technology for the purpose of, going after someone without, first getting consent to, whether the data can be used in a particular manner. And that's something that, is the biggest danger right now, I would say. Yeah.
So in what way, since you both are great academicians, in what way, the changes in technology are going to affect law education? My question is not merely regarding imparting teaching learning system. The curriculum, my focus is curriculum. In what way it's going to change the curriculum and what sort of changes are going to be?
So one is, of course, the newer areas have to be brought into our curriculum. We did not have IPR laws before. We did not have the IT rules before. So there, whatever, and IA, there's nothing as yet governing the IA's role or limitations. And how does, the chat GPT. So all these are affecting the way we, when we say curriculum, for us, curriculum also includes evaluation processes and all. So all that is affecting. But I think the other thing is also that since COVID, the reach of the curricula is much wider through the virtual platforms. Previously, curricula were thought more in terms of teaching your students physically in the class, which are right in front of you. But today we are developing curricula which can be taught through virtual mode. The methods of teaching have to be suitable to the online platform. So in that sense, some of the activities we were doing in person are now being modified to suit the virtual platforms. And doing online conversations or bringing people online to give a lecture in my classrooms, bringing experts. So my topic, I may not know that topic, I may not be the expertise, but I can bring those. So my curricula would include topics which I know I will not teach, but somebody else will teach. They don't have to be brought in physically. So in that sense, our curricula and our teaching methodology have undergone a sea change. In addition to the latest subject that we need to. Cyber laws, cyber security laws, and data protection laws. All these new papers are coming in. And also with the technology, the international trade is changing. The manner in which international trade is done is changing. So you have to bring in those legislation, those aspects in law also into the classrooms. But for me, my concern is a lot more that with all this, what is going out of the curricula is of a major concern. What is going out of the curricula is law and poverty, is disability. All these marginalized people are getting out of our curricula also. So what is coming in is the powerful areas of law, laws which concern the powerful sectors in the community. The marginalized are getting out because every university, every curricula has to be done in a time frame with a certain kind of credit, and there's other rules and regulations. Then you determine what should be in and what should be out. So what is in is all commercial law, corporate law, international trade, international business, multinational companies. So or whatever subjects are of interest to them, they are much more, it's very heavy toward that side. And the curricula has forgotten that there is this mass of people who are marginalized, who do not have access to the law. So I think it's not only the change, again, change is going in which direction? It is going in direction of creating lawyers who will serve the interests of powerful people, institutions, companies in the country, not the others.
So the basic objective, the soul of knowing law or exercising law, one need to look on that side of the point.
No, one
Am I
has to
right?
kind of, I mean, when you look at national law schools legislations, every legislation says it is to create socially sensitive lawyers. And look at our curricula. They're the last thing on our plate.
So ultimately the purpose of education is to prepare good human being. The job and earning
Because
bread
I
and
think
butter
the law,
through some skills.
any law, because powerful people are law unto themselves. Law is needed only for those who cannot exercise other powers. Your status power is not there, economic power is not there, education power is not there. You are powerless, therefore you need the strength of law. Because if there's a burly man, his hand itself is the law. He can beat up the weaker person. In order to stop him from beating the weaker person cannot protect himself because he's physically weak. Therefore, law said, no, do not hurt him. This weak person is not going to hit the Hulk. So it's only to prevent the Hulk from attacking these people that we need the law. But what we are doing now is that we're making more and more laws for the Hulk rather than for the poor people.
Rather than helping the poor people, but deprived section of the society.
Yeah.
Dr. Somashekar.
Yeah,
you are already into domain of technology. So your take on in what way the technological part or technology part should be incorporated in law education across the country, not merely reading.
That is, of course, one aspect in the sense that we need to have different courses which addresses the way in which technology has engulfed us. Now, there's a special aspect of how technological revolution is taking place, currently. In the previous decades, if you go back to 80s, 70s, and maybe even the 90s, the spread of technology was not so massive. I mean, it didn't penetrate down into the low income groups. But right now, the single instrument of a smartphone and internet has, gone so deep down into, the lower income category people as well. So it's spread massively. Now, given that is the prevalence of technology right now, it obviously is going to, impact the way in which people interact with each other, not necessarily only in terms of specific domains, but also in different ways in which we carry out normal transactions. Like, say, for instance, e-commerce, purchase sale transactions. Now it takes place online, which means that's going to impact how contract law has got to discuss these things. It could even impact the manner in which people converse with each other, people carry out other kinds of interactions with each other, which can involve things like personal data. It could also involve other aspects of law. Maybe a marriage can take place through an online medium, which means personal law will have to deal with it. So the rate at which technology is spreading, I feel it's going to mean that various areas of bread and butter law, right, are also going to have to deal with technology pervading that, apart from, separate courses, right? So that's my feeling.
In Delhi University, when I was, so the moment GST became the norm, and then all universities had to pay GST for whatever purchases we did, including ordering the tea. So the tea wala was the first casualty with that. Tea wala did not have his GST, whatever that number, etc. And therefore, earlier he was giving tea for all the meetings, etc. But the moment this came, he was the first fellow to be knocked off of that economic source he had. So while technology is streamlining some things for certain people, it is also ruling out or kind of putting them out of the market. So previous they were Pansari Wala and all these neighborhood shops were there. Now next generation, because of the consumerism and the whole globalization business, they don't want to go to any of this neighborhood shop. They want to go to a mall. So all your low-level entrepreneurs in that sense are suffering the most in this one. So today, of course, the Sabziwala also now, many of them have their smartphone. They have this, what do you call that? E-payment mechanism, but
UPI,
many of them,
payment.
yeah, but some of them still are having this small phone, which does not allow them to do that. So not everybody, if you've got a smartphone, you can get into that. But everybody still now, I know so many of the workers, they just carry a smartphone. So they need that communication because they are on the job, but they can't, they don't think that they need, they want to have this, or they can afford the big phone. So therefore, certainly though there is certainly the advantage of technology that it can go anywhere and you can reach out education also from that. But then when during COVID, we also found that the divide between urban and rural was that one family had one phone. But then if you have got the two children and the parents, you all need the cell phone for doing that. So every single member of the family needing to have a cell phone is creating the market for the cell phone sellers rather than the primary purpose being education, reaching out to them. And we do know, as teachers, we have experienced it, that with the cell phone, they will log in and they say, no, we do not have enough data. They will never put their visuals on top. And we know that they're not actually there. We call out their name, they're not there. So it was a show that, yes, even in the urban areas where they had cell phones, smartphones, but they had their individual rooms to do that. But they were doing something else while we were holding our classes. We have experienced so many times. So therefore, this whole long distance education replacing the physical education, for me, using technology for doing away with physical connections. How do you live? When we were children, we were told that human beings are social beings and they have to have interactions with the other. But with this technology, we are forgetting how to interact with human beings in real life. The dynamics of the conversations are gone because, okay, fine, I'm here with you for half an hour, for 1 hour, and then you go your way, I go my own way. You don't have to deal with colleagues 8 hours a day, every day. So lots of social skills are being lost by overimposing technology in everything, and especially in education sector.
Yeah, there's going to be a lot of impact on the way in which people interact with each other due to the,
Especially the batches which
technology.
came after, especially the batches which came after the pandemic.
Yeah.
No social skills whatsoever.
But there is going to be an impact on small businesses, brick and mortar sort of stores, with commerce impact. And but there's also the positive. Smaller merchants now can operate without, with lower overhead costs and reach out to greater markets. Many people in their homes are now able to become entrepreneurs. There's that aspect of it. But on the other hand, there are other entrepreneurs who find it very difficult to break into, the area where you develop apps and place it onto either Play Store or App Store and try to push it out there. It becomes increasingly difficult because the market's so crowded. So on the one hand, it gives some small entrepreneurs greater reach. On the other hand, it leads to a lot of frustration for other entrepreneurs who probably have better products and want to put it out there in the market, but simply just don't get exposure in this very, very crowded market. So there's both of this that's taking place.
Yeah, there are two things which I know from personal experience. One, if you want to get onto the online market and all, you need to have an app. So the technology for developing that app is not with these people. They are again dependent on somebody else to create it. And then to have communication with them that this is what I need. It's an uphill task. You got your app. Then to put it on the market, either you go to Google or you go to Apple. They decide whether they will allow you to put the app on it or not. And it's always, and also this algorithm, it's all manipulated. It's not that your app will appear first in the thing. So there is a lot of other forces which are regulating the virtual market. It's not just you and your neighbors, because you and your neighbors were in good terms, you are doing well with each other. But here it is an anonymous set of people who are regulating the business from behind. They're not outside. My niece has developed an app and she has been approaching Apple for more than 2 years now. They're not allowing her to put her app on it. They decide what app will be accepted or not accepted. So there are lots of other things in technology, and there are cartels operating there. Among the virtual, this is as competitive as the physical market has been. So I don't think there is only, certainly a lot of things have become easier. For me, personally speaking, Amazon, you don't want to go to the market anymore. So that's good. But sometimes you do find that ultimately, at the end of the day, there are lots of things that you want to see in person and the shops are not there anymore. So you want it today evening, the shop is not there because that has been closed and you have to wait. Everything you have to plan for about 1 week because Amazon will take at least 24 hours. Rather than to the market and bring it. So there are these other things also which you think that you want to look at it and do it and you thought of it the last moment. You don't have that opportunity. So the world is changing in that sense.
Yeah, the other very, very important aspect I'm sure all of us would have experienced is that with greater pervasiveness of technology, there is also the greater pervasiveness of fraudsters. I mean, probably everyone gets, a message once in a week telling them that, hello there, I want to talk to you, or just, we have got this much money for you. And they sound so convincing. The problem is that, once you're hit by that, it's very difficult for you to recover. And what's even worse is if your data has been stolen from the phone, and if it's just going to be, you're going to be blackmailed or it's going to be put up on some social media platform, the damage that it causes you is enormous. So that's the reason why, when we spoke of technology to aid in enforcing law, technology has to catch up there, because people who want to abuse technology in order to, fraud, defraud people or whatever it is, they're far ahead of us. They're ahead in the game. So we need to catch up over there in the employment of technology.
And then when the medium of committing offense changes, the medium of evidence also has to change.
Yes.
And then the massive amount of training you need to do of the judges who will then appreciate that evidence and give judgments. Huge cost involved. And time lapse between the fraud which has happened or the misuse of the technology which has happened and for people to find out ways to identify that. So there is a lot of damage also equally being done, and also the new challenges which is presenting, and they are not solved overnight in any case.
Now, coming to NEP, in what way, what is there in NEP for law education?
So presently, NEP doesn't apply to law.
Yes.
Broadly
In
speaking.
case we pursue the phase 2.
But
as and when it's, because presently, so law education is with the Bar Council of India.
Yes.
So they determine and everything. So some aspects of NEP we have kind of already begun to take note of is the option of, what do you call that, CBCS choice-based systems. Then ABC also we are going for, academic bank credit. So students will have wider option to take papers from other fields, etc. But on the flip side is also that when we also offer a course for general public that anybody can adopt it, that course is not as rigorous as a course we will create only for law students. So at the end of the day, you give them a superficial knowledge of a certain thing. And for me, as a teacher for a long time, I believe that we are forgetting the purpose of education. When initial our rishis, etc., did, that they went for knowledge, it was to become wise. So people always went, whether educated or not, to a wise man. And that was the reason why people kind of said that you learn from life, you learn from others. And it is to take wise decisions in life. Then we moved down to saying, no, I just want to learn it because I'm interested in it. But today, you need education only to get a job. So this is, for me, the lowest form, the rationale for education. So you should be skill ready, you should be all that. And why? Because you need a job. I don't think the purpose of education can or should be only to get a job. There has to be critical thinking, there has to be philosophization, there has to be opening of your mind. So all those purposes become secondary. You should know how to type, you should know whatever the skills are required of, but ethics in what you do, in terms of being cooperative with others. So a lot of things which are essential for a good human being to have a good human society, they have become secondary. I'm not saying they're gone, but they have become secondary. Your skill has become primary. But I think your ability to open the education purpose should be to open your mind to differences, to different ways of living, to difference of opinions, to be accommodated to being inclusive. So these, for me, are the primary purposes. And then this is a personal matter that what will you do with that education? But today, our NAP is all focused on jobs. What kind of jobs? That's also a question.
Dr. Somashekar.
Yeah, and part of that focus of jobs is where they focus on multidisciplinarity of studies. And even with respect to the law, they say that law should be increasingly studied from a multidisciplinary perspective, but not just law, other areas as well. And that's something that I very strongly agree with. I mean, we know that law is an instrument to alter behavior. And if you want to understand how laws can impact behavior, we have to have a multidisciplinary perspective, whether it's from a sociological perspective, or whether it's from a psychological perspective, or even using economics to understand what can be the type of impact a law can have is very, very important. So a multidisciplinary perspective, I would say, is not only essential for us to understand the law, to formulate the law, but also importantly, for those who want to practice the law. For those who want to practice the law, I personally find that there's very little strategy that is employed by lawyers in trying to decide how they need to go about a case, right? And these are areas where we can significantly gain by using a multidisciplinary perspective.
Right. So coming to now, the emerging areas, rightly said that lawyers, those who are not having biology science background, the cases which are related to hospitals and clinical research, and which involves medical investigation, they hardly understand the matter, and they're unable to put the right things in right way. So what are the emerging areas in law education? I mean, recently engineers, they have started merging into law education rather than going their post-graduation programs. They divert to law stream.
And I would say there are two things to think about. One is the approach when you say, I fully agree with Professor Somashekar when he says multidisciplinarity, and therefore economics, how economics is affecting legal provisions or legislations, how the law has to be informed of what's happening in society, how people behave, and looking at history from that perspective. But what NEP is saying that, okay, law student want to study music, he can do that. So at the end of the day, some students would have all the law papers, whether compulsory, of course, everybody will do, but in the optional, you have a choice of taking certain papers from completely unrelated to law, which is different from what Professor Somashekar is saying and what we understand by multidisciplinarity. That merging two disciplines to study one particular discipline from a different perspective. But when they study music, they go for a painting course. It's not connected with law. And that is where standards come down. Even when as I said earlier, when I offer a course on gender justice, for example, for my law students, it is very, very legislation oriented, apart from sensitization. But when I offer these students to anybody who can take it from other universities, other disciplines, it is a much more a generic course, because I do not expect them to understand the nuances of law, which we teach them in other courses. So these courses, which are open for option to other students from other disciplines, they don't get the rigor of that particular discipline also. So for me, at the one level, the students are free to decide. But whether at that age, or 16, 17, 20, can they think of their long-term consequences of taking this multidisciplinary? So today I've taken one course in music. Will I make it a music master? I like it because I'm young. I want to go for India Got Talent or whatever the program we might have. So I want to have some coaching, etc. But to count that, they can do that as a hobby courses. You can get some extra credit for that. But to use that credit into my legal degree, I find it little difficult to understand the logic of it, because all these optional courses which are offered to students from different disciplines are not as rigorous as the courses which are offered to the students of that particular line. And in that whole process, we are not offering one course on gender justice for law students and another for the others. We then give even our law students a less rigorous course, even within the law faculty. That I find it vital.
Dr. Somashekar, if you wish to contribute something.
Yeah. I mean, quite interesting. But there's always this danger of going into this Marxian concept of a complete man, or Chanakyan concept of a complete man, where you got to have all these perspectives. Now, that's definitely something that we should not move into. When we say multidisciplinary perspectives, when we teach any particular subject, there must be these other aspects which are brought in. That's about it. But it should not mean that a law student should become, an expert in economics or biology or physics or something like that. They have to understand the impact that these other aspects bring into either the enforcement of law or the way in which people behave. That's very critical. Now, the way in which, of course, one good way in which Professor Ved Kumari has already pointed out is by having these optional courses which allow people to have, like, say, for instance, you may have a course on law and accountancy, which allows people to move ahead in a different dimension. So you can choose these electives in order to gain the flavors, but not necessarily become an expert. But it does definitely make you a better lawyer because you understand the background subject, the dominating background subject behind that. For instance, if you have securities law or competition law, the dominating subject may be economics. If you're getting into something related with, where the dominating subject is accountancy, well, take up something like that. So you can't do everything. That is something that we need to understand. But what I am more worried about, and I'm increasingly speaking about, is, do we have a scientific workload for students? Do we have a scientific curriculum structure for students? When I say scientific curriculum structure, we have a curriculum structure which seems to think that our students are kinds of machines. We got to feed them more and more and more subjects. The society is changing. You need to learn this, you need to learn that. I mean, we also need to create, better citizens. We also need to create, students who come into university and go out feeling that not only have they gained education, but it has also transformed the way in which they approach life and how it makes them stronger when they go out into the world to, stand on their own 2 feet. For instance, I mean, there was this university in the US which I was visiting. I think it's the Tulsa University, where they had this course on, law practice and happiness, something like that. And it was a hit course. Now, should we try something over here? I'm not sure if many universities would say, oh, this is even a legitimate one. But we have to understand that there are different aspects of students' needs which genuinely contributes to them becoming better lawyers. So this is something that we really need to think about, not just think that the world is changing and the law students need to have every different aspect of the law. No, that's not the idea. We also got to equip them to become better lawyers. We also got to equip them to know how, while they go about becoming, lawyers or practicing law in a law firm, how can they be stronger individuals mentally? That's very important.
So can we take some quick questions from the audiences?
I thought we're at 1800.
Hello. So I am attempting some quick questions. This is Nishita from MIT University. She's asking, what should I do in third year for getting into corporate law firm? How should I improve my CV in third year?
I have no idea. Ask your seniors.
Well, that's a
Getting
common
into law
question.
firm.
Yeah, most students, I mean, it's a genuine need, it's a genuine concern. At the end of 5 years, you need a job there, and becoming corporate lawyer is obviously something that pays well. But from what I have seen and from what I see, you obviously got to choose courses which help you to become better in whatever area the law firms are looking at. I mean, you can't become an expert in every single area of corporate law, but there are certain areas in which you can choose specializations, which is one area, which is one way of going about it. Well, the second standard practice is to try and get yourself an internship in some of the law firms in these areas, and get an exposure to that. So these are ways in which you can improve. And of course, whether you like it or not, unfortunately, performance in whatever you do also helps.
Right. So this is Ms. Shalini. She's director at MIT University. Kindly elaborate about right to privacy and data protection. I think we have covered a lot during the conversation, but still, if anything else, if you wish to.
It's something which is too new, really. It's just we are entering into this territory right now, and to be honest, we are yet to see how exactly enforcement practice is going to bear out. So we'll have to wait for some time with respect to that. I mean, I'm guessing the question is not about the subject matter of the law itself. It's too new. It's just sort of out there, and there's a lot that needs to be done. But why I say, it's too new is simply because, one, most of us are unaware that we have some law related to that. Second, most of us don't care. Or third, most of us don't even know that our privacy is being violated. Now, someone once told me that, if you go to the rural areas and if you ask someone, can you give me your phone? I need to make a phone call. Or can you give me a phone number? Can you give me a Aadhaar card number? They just give it to you like that. So it doesn't matter to them. But then as you move somewhere else, this becomes very critical. People become very sensitive. They're more knowledgeable, and they say, oh, this can be abused. They can impersonate you, or they can use it for something else. So there's so much of divergences with respect to the awareness and the need for even protecting your own personal data or privacy, that there's a lot that needs to be done, and the law in itself is not going to be able to do it. We need to have more education in different ways, to let people be aware of this.
And also, I think there are two things. One is where the government is asking for our data. The other is where we are voluntarily giving it. For all the free apps, for all the Gmail, for the Yahoo or whatever mail, etc., we are giving the data ourselves. Because we want this free thing for your free technology. We are giving it. So there's no coercion. And it is not uneducated. We are all educated. We still are using our free apps for doing so many things. And we give them all of our data there, under the assumption that they will keep it secret. But sometimes even that is not there. They do say, how many of us, before signing up for any app, have actually looked at their statements of privacy, etc. But they say that we will be sharing this data for certain similar, some conditions are there that they do spell it out, that we're going to share your data. And forget about others, Somashekar. When we at CLAT correct the data, do we not share it? Who is not sharing?
That's not something that should be done. But the ways in which our data is shared, and people are not even aware of that. For instance, we go to a supermarket and they say, can I have your phone number?
Yeah.
Where's the data going? You really don't need to give your phone number there. You think you're going to get some credit points, or they're going to inform you, but that's where your data starts spilling out. There are numerous ways in which you just give up your information, and then you get all these spam calls. That's where you're getting these spam calls from, by giving up your phone number in all these different areas. Don't give your phone number, don't give your personal details to areas where it really doesn't make a difference to your transaction. Just that's something that we really need to be cautious about. But there's, it's a behavioral thing, right? I mean, if you look at it, and that's how it's exploited. Why do I say it's a behavioral thing? See, we are, from a psychological perspective, that we say that we are inherently lazy. Human beings are inherently lazy. We tend to make the easiest of choices, right? Now, if you visit European websites, you have a cookie policy which is there, and the cookie policy says accept only necessary cookies or accept all cookies, right? So, and the default option, if you actually open up, is that all unnecessary cookies are turned off. But if you come down to India, if you still look at the websites, they have a cookie policy, but the default option is all the cookies are turned on. And the reason is very simple. We are so lazy that we're not going to turn them off. So this is a way in which our behavioral traits are exploited, not just by Indian firms, but firms across the world. They've been abusing this. So unless we have more stringent laws, which the Data Protection Act or law is trying to bring about, we're not going to have this happen. But is the law complete? Are there still gaps there? That is something which will have to be addressed as we see how things change.
So before moving to the next question, I think Professor Ved Kumari, she's already having some assignment. She needs to join some meeting. We extend our gratitude to Professor Ved Kumari ji for sharing her valuable experiences, knowledge, and inputs to cover up the subject in a holistic manner. And I'm sure the subject is quite lengthy. In the coming times, we'll be having more session, and we'll request you again to be with us. So thank you once again.
Thank you very much. It was a pleasure sharing the platform with Professor Somashekar. An interesting conversation.
Sure.
Yeah.
Bye-bye, Professor Ved Kumari.
Bye.
So coming to Dr. Somashekar, he's Mr. Avinash Chaudhary. He's a medical doctor, nephrologist. His question is, if I wish to practice medical jurisprudence, how to start?
Well, there are courses, sort of distance courses available. They're called as medical law and ethics, which you can subscribe to and do, which many doctors do take for the purpose of understanding the laws which apply with respect to medical practice. And it really helps, because some basic awareness of these laws goes a long way in preventing yourself from being liable to tortious damages or even maybe criminal liabilities.
Right.
Of course, NLSA itself has a medical law.
Platforms are there online, and it's convenient to join online courses, and you can gradually evolve in this particular area. Khushi Goyal from Amity University, Chhattisgarh. How different is law from the books and real life?
Substantially different, but that doesn't mean we shouldn't learn the law. The law is meant to achieve desirable things in the society. So when you step out in the world, there are two things that happen. You'll notice that in most instances, at least in a country like us, the law is mostly not followed, simply because we don't have the resources to enforce it. Or you'll also find out that the way in which the law is enforced is also probably not what exactly the law in theory wants to achieve. So when you go out there, you'll find things very difficult, very different. So you have to be able to adapt to these conditions in order to achieve the objective of law.
Okay. Thank you. This is Lovely Datta from DPS Whitefield. She's principal. A very generous question, rather very concerned question. How can we make our students more aware of the legal matters relevant to them? We wish that people should be law-abiding, but other than those who are not into the law domain, the rest of the people, they are not concerned. They're not at all aware of about the law.
So I think we don't have to go to the outside world really. Let's look at within our campus. How many people are aware of gender rights? How many people practice it? What about the issue of ragging? What about casteist behavior? So if we can sensitize our students to how we behave with each other within the small, ecosystem of a university, and teach them how to be more sensitive with, with the other gender, with women, with people from, other castes, right? That in itself is a learning. The second way in which we can sensitize them is to, in whatever little manner, engage them with, say, you have a legal clinic. Well, through the legal clinic, let them engage with people who are needy, who are poor, who cannot afford, costly legal advice. So that's another way to understand how the society works. So there are several different ways, but I would always say, let's start at home. Let's start with the university.
So I think legal clinic can be a very good concept to enlighten the students. Initially, he's Mr. Supriyo Ghosh from Jagdish Seth School of Management. He's a professor. Would like to know if there is any law courses in India which uses technology such as AI.
Well, I don't know about law courses using AI. There are different technologies which are already existing. I mean, which we all used during, the pandemic to adapt to a world where there's no physical contact. But there are entrepreneurs who are increasingly jumping into the world of AI and providing solutions. Quite a few of my own students have, used the chatbot AI platform for the purpose of producing legal solutions, drawing up simple contracts to more complex solutions. They're using the AI platform for this. And this is only going to get more and more or better and better. And that in turn, going back to the question of how technology should impact legal courses, that in turn can impact how students, or rather what students need to learn about the use of technology when they go out there to perform their own functions. I mean, whether it's in a law firm or whether they get into litigation, how can I use this instrument for the purpose of providing legal solutions?
Right. One more question on AI. Nisha Bhakar, CEO Education, keen to understand the impact of AI on legal field and what should school do to orient students towards the legal field.
Well, students are very, very curious and they're faster than us. We are not talking about students using, chat GPT or, for the purpose of writing their projects. So they're way ahead of us, even while we think that we got to incorporate courses which will allow them to learn about this. But yes, we need to do this in a better manner. Has technology, has AI impacted the legal profession? Gradually. Well, if you look at the type of clients that these new platforms are serving, they're actually serving even law firms, which will mean that inevitably there's going to be an impact on the number of jobs that law schools are going to be able to, cater to. I mean, how many students are they going to be able to place as this gradually picks up, velocity? So yes, it's going to be adopted. I mean, quite early on, there's this software created by IBM called Watson, which is being used. And there are more and more and more which are being developed for the purpose of enabling lawyers to provide better responses in the courtrooms. And that can all mean that they will depend less and less on lower skill sets for the purpose of their courtroom purposes.
So last question from Santosh Chaube. He's a professor in GS Rai Soni University, Amravati. What must be the role of law in India for overall development?
Well, the role of law must be to serve the most needy. That is very important. And increasingly, as we talk about technology and technology, if you look at the way in which we are growing, economic growth in India, you'll find that what you call as the employment elasticity of growth, for every 1% growth in the GDP, the number of jobs that are being created is fewer and fewer and fewer, while the number of people being added to the job market is substantially higher, which means that we need a more active welfare state. We need a better social welfare net for the purpose of protecting these people. And which also means that, it's already seen there's going to be increasing inequality and there's going to be frustration. And in an iniquitous system, that kind of iniquity can also pervade into the enforcement of law. So therefore, we need a state which is more proactive in terms of providing legal aid for those who cannot afford it, so that their rights are better protected.
Right. So any student, earlier engineering and medical, two prominent fields were there. So law is gradually picking up and more serious students are coming for law education. So your take on, rather your piece of advice for students, those who wish to explore themselves in the field of law, what kind of attributes, mental, physical, abilities are required to, proceed further in the field of law? Maybe it's a courtroom or a sitting in corporate office, providing advices.
I think curiosity is very important. Logical thinking is very important. And it doesn't mean that curiosity is something which is essential. It's a precondition. Logical thinking, well, if you say, well, I don't have that skill set, you can develop it. But these are two imperatives. So, there are many people who come to, take up law because they don't like maths, right? But then we are just speaking of multidisciplinarity approach, and there's going to be some elementary maths involved over there as well when you start off your initial courses, right? Or whether you get to accountancy and law and things like that. There's going to be some basic, not too heavy duty, right? So these are some basic traits that you need to have if you want to get into the area of law. And generally speaking, with respect to career choice, my emphasis is always, please look at the demand and supply side aspect of the job market. There are many people who are getting into a lot of so-called engineering institutes, and I call them so-called engineering institutes because they promise a lot, they charge a huge amount, and the quality of education is poor. And then when you get out of the job, your employability is poor, or you get a salary which is extraordinarily pitiful, right? And then look at medical education, the craze about medical education too. Parents must understand that the probability of their child getting into this is extremely small, is very, very small. So it's not that you should give that up, but you should take it if the child has a passion for it, but not try to push your child into engineering or medical sciences only. There are so many options. Law is a fantastic option. And these are some traits that you can have for law, right? And then there are other areas as well. Just let them explore their creativity. That's what I would, suggest.
Right. So similarly, parents, those mostly parents, they look for a secure career. Security kills the growth. So your piece of advice for the parents, in a case if your ward is not interested in mathematics, so not knowing mathematics is not end of the world. So in what way, the roadmap or a growth map is there in law education, law career also?
Well, as I said, don't worry about maths for law. You really don't need that much of maths for law. But I'm saying don't give it up either. But in terms of there's always a trade-off. It's okay to look for a secure job. That's perfectly fine. There's no harm in that. It all depends upon one's risk appetite. But if the child has a preference for something else, and if they're passionate about it, forcing them into something which is safe and secure might just actually kill them, dampen them. I've seen so many who have just come into the law school simply because they were told to do so, and then they didn't fit in. They get into a depression, maybe they quit, and then it takes quite some time for them to actually start doing well in academics and pick themselves up. They have to forcefully adapt to a particular course. Now, that is not something that we need to do, whether it is for medical, engineering, or law. I think there are several helpful instruments out there which can help to identify what exactly a child is good in, where the potential lies, and trying to align the choice of professional courses in that particular manner. And there are many other courses. I mean, there are people who have gone for mass communication and journalism, and then they've gone on to do a master's in public policy, and they go on to do very fascinating jobs, whether with international institutions or government organizations. So we must really remove this over obsession with medical and engineering courses and explore the wide world out there. And not just because there are other courses, but they're also they're higher paying, in fact. All right, they give you better rewards, in fact.
Right. Thank you, Professor Somashekar. It was really engaging and enlightening conversation. And it is 6:20. I mean, I just forgot about watching the time, and it was going in a smooth manner. And I'm sure still many questions are there, but the limitation of time is there. So with the thanks for being with us, and extending thanks to the participants. You can download your certificates after filling the feedback form. And the next month, or might be this month only, towards the end of the month, we'll be having another interesting conversation. Just wait for a couple of days and you will find the slide of another topic. This is all for today. Thank you once again to all.
Thank you very much. All the best to all the students and parents.
Thank you.